Lace making has always been one of those crafts that I really want to try and learn, but I've just been too intimidated. I'm talking specifically about bobbin lace. I keep seeing these videos on social media of people with like 100 little wooden pegs tied to strings and they're shuffling them around in ways that I can't comprehend, and they end up with these beautiful, intricate pieces of lace. It's like witchcraft to me. And I love crafts, so I'm very intrigued. But there are tons of different styles of lace making out there in the world, many of which were developed as simpler, less expensive ways of mimicking bobbin lace. So today I'm going to try and wrap my head around the concept of bobbin lace, but I want to try and ease myself in with some supposedly less complicated techniques, Irish lace crochet and tatting, and see how the three compare. Okay, so I want to start out with Irish Crochet Lace because it's the one out of the three that I actually have some experience with. I've been crocheting for several years, so I'm really familiar with all of the basics, and I have dabbled with Irish lace crochet specifically in the past. So I think this will be a nice and easy starting point, and then I can work my way into newer territory. So Irish crochet lace is essentially just very fine and delicate crochet done in a way that creates very intricate patterns to form lace. It was developed in Ireland, I believe, during the potato famine as a way to create less expensive lace. I assume it's because crochet is something that more people knew how to do as opposed to like bobbin lace or needle lace, so it was just more accessible for more people to make. So it started out trying to replicate existing styles of lace, but then sort of developed into its own unique thing. The most recognizable feature to me are the three-dimensional floral motifs. You'll see a lot of rosettes with like raised petals that come off of the work. To me, that's like the most iconic part of this style of lace making. So I want to make like a little doily or some similar piece with a raised floral motif. I checked out an ebook from the library that's a manual for Irish lace crochet. It covers a lot of the basics. It has patterns for different motifs that you can kind of combine together to create your own designs, and then it has patterns for more finished pieces. I found a pattern in there that I really like, so I'm going to give that a shot. So I'm going to use some number 10 crochet cotton for this, and for all of the other different styles of lace making that I'm going to try, just to keep things consistent. And then the hook that I'm using doesn't have a size on it, but I checked it on my little hook knitting needle gauge checker tool, and it was slightly smaller than the 2mm hole, but it's a little bit bigger than my number 10 steel crochet hook. I think it's probably around a size 5 or 6 is my guess. If you don't know lace crochet hooks, they're also called steel crochet hooks. The sizing goes backwards, so the bigger the number, the smaller the hook size is going to be. That's pretty much all I'll need for this, other than scissors and blocking supplies, but I'll need those things for all the different methods that I'm trying. So I've got everything I need, so let's go ahead and get started. I think Irish crochet lace is fairly simple to pick up if you already know how to crochet, since it's literally the same thing. It's at a much smaller scale, obviously, and I find that counting stitches is much more important than with standard crochet, since you're not just working to the end of a row. You need to know exactly how many stitches are in each part of every motif. The other main difference that I notice is that you're typically not crocheting into stitches the way you do with standard crochet. You're working over either chains of stitches or over a separate thicker piece of yarn called padding. For example, to make the petals of the rosette, you start with a base chain of stitches, then work double crochets around that whole chain instead of putting your hook through the bars of the stitch. So I've been working on my little rosette motif, and one thing I've noticed in all of the Irish lace crochet that I've done is that the patterns are so ridiculously complicated at first glance. Like if you really break them down, it's just regular crochet stitches, but when you just get presented with this block of text, like for example, the pattern that I'm following now, I finished the main rosette, and then now I'm working the ground that surrounds that, and I'm on round 2 of that. I really just want to read out these instructions as they are written so you can see what I'm dealing with. I now present to you a dramatic reading of rosette surrounded by a square-shaped ground. Second round, 1 chain, 1 single between the first and second picots, placed behind the picots, 1 chain, 1 single between the second and third picots, double star, 6 chain, 3 united picots, 6 chain, 1 plain between the first and second picots, 1 chain, 1 plain between the second and third picots, 11 chain, 1 plain between the first and second picots, 2 chain, turn the work, make over the 11 chain, 12 plain, 1 chain, turn the work, make 12 plain which are placed on the 2 horizontal loops of the plain stitches beneath, turn the work, Make 3 times, 6 chain and 1 plain on the 4th plain, turn the work, make over every loop of chain stitches, 1 plain, 1 half treble, 6 treble, 1 half treble, and 1 plain, make 4 single descending into the 3 united picots, 1 chain, 1 plain between the 2nd and 3rd picots, 6 chain, 3 united picots, 6 chain, 1 plain between the 1st and 2nd picots, 1 chain, 1 plain between the 2nd and 3rd picots, repeat 3 times from the double stars, 6 single on the first 6 chain. That's step 2. I think part of the issue, or even like the main factor in the issue, is that this pattern was written in the early 1900s. The book that I'm referencing is published in the 80s, but it's a reprint of a book from sometime in the early 1900s. They don't give a specific date, not sure why, but it's using different terminology. Like if you crochet, you were listening to all of that and you're like, what's a plain? There's a key in the beginning of the book that tells you like this means that and that means this. I had to write it down. So a modern day slip stitch in American terminology in this book is called a single stitch. A single crochet is a plain stitch. A double crochet is a treble. A half double is a half treble, and a double crochet is a double treble. That terminology is much more similar to modern day UK crochet terminology because they're different, which is one of the fun things about learning crochet. So we use the same names but for different things, which is not confusing at all. And the way the pattern is written with just a block of text makes it kind of difficult to follow as you're just looking at that, but if you break it down into individual steps, it's not too difficult to work out. You just have to like really sit and pay attention and keep track of where you are and when you're repeating things and what's going on. So I'm gonna try and make that paragraph into the second round of my rosette, but I'll check in a little bit later once I have this whole piece finished. Hello, I have discovered I have made a critical error in the first round of the ground. Because in the pattern what they do is they start with a V centered over one of the petals on the rosette, and then the next V goes from like the edge of the first petal to the center of the next one, and then from the center of that petal to the edge of the next. So that way you end up with like, I think it's 12 V shapes going all the way around. What I did was the first V centered over a petal, and the next one centered over the gap between the first and the next petal, and then the next one centered over the petal and the next one in the gap. I ended up with 16 V's in the first round. So I thought I was almost done with the second round, and then I realized I had way more space than I should. In order to correct that, I would have to rip back all of my work up until the start of round 1, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do instead of making this a square with 4 corners, I'm going to make it a pentagon and go with 5. And even then, it's not going to be totally even. All of these little petal shapes have 2 V's in between each of them. If I do 5 corners with the little petal shapes, one of them's going to have 3 V's between the 2. It's not going to be a square, and it's not going to be perfectly perfect, but it'll be done. And I think I'm just going to skip the third round because I don't want to do it. Hate to say it, but I really don't. So I guess this is a good reminder to like really read through all of the instructions before you just charge ahead and assume the pattern is symmetrical, because it turns out this one isn't. So I'm going to leave it as like a 5-pointed thing, leave it the size, and then go ahead and block it and see how all that goes. So we're freestyling a little bit, making some changes and moving forward. Okay, so now that I've sort of dipped my toes into the lace making realm with the Irish Crochet Lace, I'm going to move on to tatting. I'm less familiar with tatting. I've never tried it out before, but I've definitely like heard of it and seen some stuff about it, and then have been doing some reading in preparation for this video. From what I can tell, it's basically tying a series of knots into string, sometimes over top of another cord, to form these lacy patterns. Based on the research I've been doing online, there are a few different ways to do tatting. There is needle tatting, which uses a blunt sewing needle. I also read something about crow tatting, which uses a crochet hook, but what I think is the more common style of tatting, or at least is the kind of tatting that I've always heard about, and it's what I'm going to be trying out today, is shuttle tatting. So for shuttle tatting, you need to have a shuttle, which is what this little guy here is. It's a little oval shaped thing. It's got 2 layers and then a bobbin in the middle that you wrap the thread around. The ones that I have are plastic. I think most of the ones you can find today are made of plastic, but historically I've seen that they made them out of like wood and ivory and metal and all sorts of very fancy pretty things, but I'm using plastic shuttles. These actually belonged to my great uncle who did tatting. My mom recently gave me his tatting stuff that she had, that she'd inherited when he passed away, so I've got a few of his shuttles and a couple of pieces of tatting work that he had done, which are just so pretty and so nicely done. I really need to like wash them and block them and like frame them or something so I can have them displayed. It's really nice to get to see like some examples of the finished work in person. So I've got 4 shuttles. They're all plastic. 2 of them are Clover brand, 2 of them are Boy. And if you crochet, those might be familiar names to you because both of those companies also make crochet hooks. Based on the research I've been doing, there are different styles of tatting shuttles. Some of them, like this guy, have a little pick at the end so that you can kind of pick up the thread when you're tying the knots. And then other styles have a little crochet hook built into the end, and then some of them also just don't have anything at all. They're just plain, like the back end of this one. The Boy shuttles have the little crochet hooks built into the ends. So I was like, oh, okay, that's just different brand names. And then I looked a little bit more closely and I noticed that the orange Clover shuttle that I have, the pick end is kind of like warped and like melted almost. So I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. That got melted somehow. And then I looked a little bit more at the Boy shuttles, and I realized that they're also kind of melted too on the ends of the hooks. And then I got a sneaking suspicion, and I looked up Boy brand tatting shuttles, and I was able to find several like eBay listings for this exact style of shuttle in the same red plastic, and none of them have the hook. They all have a little pick. So I'm pretty sure he melted these a little bit with like a lighter or something and then bent them to form a hook, which is very in character for my great uncle. So it'll be fun to try out both and see which one I like better, I guess. All of the shuttles are already wound with thread, but I have no idea how old this thread is and how like stable and sturdy it is. And also all of the shuttles are a little bit sticky, so I'm gonna unwind all of these and then give them a quick wash and then rewind them with my number 10 crochet cotton. Actually get started. I was able to get some actual physical library books about tatting. The one that I'm following today is Aunt Ellen's Tatting Handbook, a treasury of techniques and projects by the staff of the Workbasket magazine. I think it's from the 1980s. It's got a lot of diagrams that seem fairly easy to understand. We shall see if I am able to piece all of this together from still images and written instructions, or if I end up needing to find a video tutorial. I'm gonna get my shuttles all cleaned and set up, and then we can start trying to figure this out. Okay, so I've got my shuttle wound. Hold the flat side of the shuttle between thumb and forefinger of your working hand in a horizontal position. The thread coming from the back of the shuttle. Spread the middle ring and little fingers of your helping hand. First half of the double stitch, hold the shuttle in your working hand, bring the shuttle thread across on the What does that mean? I don't think I can figure this out from a book. So I was not at all able to understand how to do tatting from a book. I mean, one of the books that I got literally said in the introduction that people used to think it was impossible to learn tatting without an in-person teacher, so that should have been the first red flag. Ultimately, I needed to see the process in action to understand, so I started looking for video tutorials. I also found that, as with almost every other form of fiber art, everyone has a slightly different way of working, the way they hold the shuttle, the way they move their hands to form the stitches, so it took me a while to find a tutorial that made sense to me. I found Bryce Bryce Adams videos on YouTube to be the most helpful personally. I'll link them down in the description. I found that she had the clearest instructions and simplest technique of all the different sources that I looked at. The first thing that I had to figure out was flipping the stitch, or as one of the older manuals I looked at calls it, the transfer, which is so sinister sounding for no reason. Basically, tatting is done by tying half-hitch knots. If you've ever made one of those macrame friendship bracelets, you've tied a half-hitch. You have one straight thread and the other loops around it to make the knot. With tatting, you've got the shuttle thread and the ring thread, though it's actually all one thread that's just wrapped around your non-dominant hand in a specific way, but I digress. The ring thread is secured at both ends, so it can't be wrapped around to make the loop, while the shuttle thread is free at one end and can form the loop. But the way tatting works, you need the ring thread to be wrapped around the shuttle thread. So you have to flip the stitch. You loop the shuttle thread around the ring thread to start tying a half hitch, but before you tighten the loop down, you release the tension on the ring thread to give it slack and simultaneously pull on the shuttle thread to make it taut. This flips the loop of the half hitch, so the ring thread is now going around the shuttle thread, and then you can tighten the loop down. You do this twice, first so that the loop faces down on the shuttle thread, then again so that it faces up, to make one double stitch, which is the base for all of tatting. I don't know if I'm explaining that super well. For me at least, it was something that I really needed to see in motion to fully understand. It requires a lot of coordination with both hands, and your non-dominant hand has to do a good bit of work. It took me a while to pick up the rhythm, but once I had that down, it wasn't terribly difficult. Okay, I have completed my first piece of tatting. That's actually a finished thing and not just miscellaneous loops. It's a little flower, like a little snowflake. It's definitely a little wonky. My joins leave something to be desired, but for a first go at it, I'm pretty happy. I'm definitely starting to get it. I feel like I've got a decent handle on the basics. So I'm going to attempt to follow a pattern. This is a different book that I got from the library. This is Tatting in Lace by Mary Konior. Gonna try this carnation pattern, which might be a little ambitious given I struggled a lot with this, but I want to give it a go and try and jump in. I'm gonna give it a shot and see how far I get before I give up. Probably no. Let's be confident. I'm gonna give it a shot and make the whole thing. I was gonna say perfectly. That's a bit too much. I'm gonna make the thing. It'll exist. This pattern, like all tatting patterns from what I can tell, is made up of rings, which are closed loops of double stitches, and chains. Double stitches worked on a separate thread that joins with the rings to make arcs. The little frilly loops are picots. They are made by leaving space between double stitches so that you get an extra loop of thread. Picots are also used as connection points to join rings and chains to create the lace pattern. So it is the next day. Definitely starting to pick it up and understand the mechanics of it. I think the biggest thing was figuring out what to call all of the motions in my head, because I was following these tutorials and they're like, you go over, under, around, and through, and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm understanding what I'm supposed to do, but keeping the rhythm was a big issue, because I would go twist, under, over, flip, pull, over, under, through, around, and then I realized I'm just singing Whipped Into Shape from Legally Blonde the musical, and that isn't helping, shockingly. So I think I finally got it kind of nailed down in my mind. It's a towards you, forward through the ring, back, relax the tension so you flip the stitch, tighten down, and then away from you, backwards through the ring, flip the stitch, and tighten down. And that's it, and you just keep doing that. It's definitely a workout for your non-dominant hand because you're holding it in this weird position and then trying to manage the tension with your index finger. So I'm gonna keep tatting away and I'll check in whenever something interesting happens. Probably whenever I finish this thing. Hopefully whenever I finish this thing. So if something interesting happens before then, something has gone wrong. I continued following the tatting pattern with no major issues. There were a few small mistakes where I joined elements together at the wrong points, but nothing that made it impossible to keep going with the pattern like I had with the crochet lace. Once I had completed the pattern, I wove in my thread tails, which honestly was the most annoying step, and then I blocked it. Okay, so I have completed my first piece of tatting. It's not perfect, of course. There's some wonkiness with the tension, and I definitely still struggle a bit with the joins. There are a couple points where I just straight up joined to the wrong section of the pattern, so it's a little bit funky, but for a first attempt, I think this is pretty good. And so now that I feel like I have a pretty good base understanding of tatting, I'm going to move on to bobbin lace, which is kind of like the final boss of this whole video. As I've said, I find bobbin lace to be the most intimidating out of all of the different techniques that I want to try, but I've been doing some research, I've been watching some tutorials, and I think I have a general idea of how it's supposed to work, and it seems a bit less mystifying than it did previously. Bryce Adams on YouTube, I think her channel name is just Bryce. She's the one who made the tatting tutorials that I found the most helpful. She also has some videos on bobbin lace, so I've been watching through those. I'm going to follow her beginner's tutorial for a basic braid, half stitch, and cloth stitch first, and then I found a pattern for a sampler. Another YouTuber on here, Bookcording by Bianca, made a video a few years ago about her process of getting started in bobbin lace. She recommended this pattern from Katherina Weyssin. They created a pattern for a sampler that starts out with very basic techniques and then adds new things in to create a more complex, intricate pattern. So I want to give that a shot as well today. So for bobbin lace, you do need some supplies. You need bobbins, of course. Bobbins are just little sticks that you wrap your thread around. Usually they're made out of wood, and you manipulate those to weave the lace. They can be very intricately carved and painted and decorated, and they can get quite expensive, but at their core, they are just little sticks that you wrap your thread around, so it's pretty easy to substitute less expensive, easier to find items. You also need a lace pillow. The way bobbin lace is made, you're weaving small sections and then pinning them down in place as you go to keep the tension and everything set correctly until you have woven enough to lock it in, I believe is the way it works. So you need something to pin into, and that's where the pillow comes in. There are several different styles that I've seen. There's cookie pillows that are just flat, round things. There's bolster pillows that are cylindrical and shaped like a bolster pillow, hence the name. And there's mini roller pillows that are like tiny bolster pillows that are set into bigger, flatter pillows, and they move, and it's a whole thing. Really, you just need something fairly sturdy and pinnable, so I'm gonna try and use my foam blocking mats that I use for knitting. They are literally made to have textiles pinned onto them, so I think they will work pretty good for this. For the pins, I have a pack of sequin pins. They're just little tiny metal ones. And then I'm going to be using the number 10 crochet cotton for this. I think that might be a little bit too heavy for the bobbin lace, like in general, but I'm gonna give it a shot and see how well it works, just for the sake of consistency between all of the different techniques, but we shall see how well it works. I started out by winding my bobbins. Bobbin laces worked with pairs of bobbins, so I wound each end of long lengths of thread around clothespins and tied them off with a lacemaker's knot, which secures the thread but still allows you to spool more off. Then I hung each pair of bobbins from a pin stuck into my makeshift pillow. I made a little paper guide with just 2 vertical lines to help me maintain an even width while I worked, and that went under the bobbins, pinned flat to the pillow. Then I started weaving some of the basic stitches. Everything is made up of crosses, passing the left-hand bobbin over the right, and twists, passing the right over the left. First I tried a basic braid, using 2 pairs of bobbins, crossing the middle 2, then twisting each pair. So if you think of the bobbins as being numbered 1 through 4 left to right, it's 2 over 3, then 4 over 2, and 3 over 1. That pattern is the foundation for everything that I learned about bobbin lace. Next I tried the half stitch using 4 pairs of bobbins. It's the same cross, twist, repetition as the braid, but now you work across the work by crossing and twisting 2 pairs, then dropping the pair on the left, picking up the next 2 bobbins on the right, repeating the process all the way down, then putting a pin between the last 2 pairs of bobbins. Then you add an extra twist to the last pair, and work back to the beginning going right to left. By doing this, you weave the threads over and under each other, creating a fabric. Next, I learned the whole stitch, which is almost the same as the half stitch, but you cross, twist, cross your 2 pairs of bobbins before moving along. This extra cross makes a much more stable fabric. It makes a plain weave, whereas the half stitch makes a lattice pattern that is much more liable to stretch and warp. Once I felt like I had a feel for the basic stitches, I cut my bobbins free and unpinned my work so I could move on to the sampler. The sampler starts off with just braids, then it introduces more and more elements to slowly work up to a more complicated pattern. It's a free pattern with written step-by-step instructions, and I think it was really good practice as it has you work a lot of the basics over and over again. Okay, so I finished up the bobbin lace sampler that I was working on, and if I'm being honest, I didn't really enjoy the process much at first. I kind of had a similar experience with the tatting, where like at first when I wasn't getting it, I was starting to get kind of frustrated, but with the tatting it felt more like a challenge that I could overcome, so it was still overall an enjoyable process, and once I picked up on it, it was like fun to do. With the bobbin lace, At first, it was just too much. It was kind of overstimulating with like how many threads and how many pins there are. I think especially working with the number 10 crochet cotton, like I predicted, it's too chunky for this work. I think at least just at the scale, if I sized the pattern up, I think this could work a bit better, but for what this is, it's very lumpy bumpy, and so like it's hard to see what you're doing, especially when there's so many pins covering everything up. So I was not really having a good time with this guy, and I was kind of bummed out, like, oh, maybe I just don't like bobbin lace, but I did give it another go. I made another little sample following the last pattern from the sampler, the most complex one, and I used a much finer thread. This is a silk hand sewing thread that I got from an estate sale. It's a little bit heavier than what I would use on my sewing machine, but still very, very fine. I had a much better time with this. Ironically, it was a lot easier to see what I was doing when I was working with a thinner thread. And like, that's lace. That's lace. I'm still like kind of blown away that I made this with my hands. That's crazy. I made that. And of course it's not perfect. It's still like one of my very first attempts at bobbin lace, but like, that's lace. I don't know. I'm just very happy with it. It's so pretty. It makes me feel powerful that I can make something like this with string. So I have decided I do in fact enjoy making bobbin lace. I also think part of the issue is the supplies that I was using. The like found materials definitely worked, but I think they kind of impeded my enjoyment. I wasn't a fan of working with the clothespins. Like, if you want to give bobbin lace a try, I definitely recommend using clothespins. They're much cheaper and easier to find. I already had some on hand, so I didn't even need to buy anything, and then like I could use them for other stuff afterwards. But I did find that they were just kind of big and clunky to manipulate. And of course, I've never worked with actual bobbin lace bobbins, but they seem to be a good bit smaller and easier to manipulate around. So I don't think I'm going to go out and buy a whole set of bobbins right away. They're kind of expensive, and I don't know how much I'm going to be doing bobbin lace on the regular. So I'll probably try and find just something a bit better than the clothespins. I also found that I had some issues using the blocking mat in place of the lace pillow. It definitely worked. It's super easy to pin into. I did find that it was a bit too small of a work surface, and these are like tileable blocking mats, so they kind of link together like puzzle pieces, so I could expand my work area, but the size increments for the blocking mats just wasn't quite right for this sort of work. I think I'm gonna try and make a bolster pillow, one of the long cylindrical kind. I think I can make it pretty easily using stuff that I have on hand, and I feel like that would be really useful for making lengths of trim because you can rotate it as you work. But that concludes my little exploration of different styles of lace making. I had a lot of fun trying all of these out. It was really interesting to do them all in succession and see the ways in which they were similar and different. They all have very different looks to them, and you can create very different motifs with each one. I think the difficulty ranking of each of them that I had assumed at the beginning definitely still holds true. Like, the crochet lace was very simple for me to do. Like I said, I've already been crocheting for years, and I've already played around with Irish crochet lace, so that wasn't a surprise. Tatting was definitely somewhere in the middle. It took a while for me to pick up, but once I got it, I had a lot of fun doing it, and it wasn't too difficult. And bobbin lace was definitely the hardest out of the three. I think I'm starting to get it and get a grasp on it, but I've only like just broken the surface on all the different stuff in bobbin lace. Like, there's so many other techniques that I've read about but not attempted. So I'm very excited to try and dive in a bit more into bobbin lace and all of these other techniques. And I would like to explore other styles of lace making in the future. There are just so many out in the world, so if there are any other styles of lace making that you would like to see me try and learn, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. Or if there are other forms of fiber art beyond lace making that you think I'd be interested in, please do let me know down in the comments. I'm always looking to try out new things and see what I can incorporate into my toolkit. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you could click whatever buttons down below you feel like clicking on. Thank you to all the patrons over on Patreon for supporting this channel, and especially those in the Magnanimous Maelstroms tier: Hollis Morell, Froggy in Love, Mary Jean Rue, Oscar, Obi Knit Kenobi, Evelyn, Bear Hardy, and Perfect Primrose. And that is it. Have a lovely rest of your day. Goodbye!